gentlemen, you're watching NDTV. Days after Mark Zuckerberg's remark on a podcast that several governments, including the one in India, lost power in elections held after COVID-19 pandemic, Meta has now apologized for the comments, calling it an error. Remember, it was IT and INB Minister of India, Ashwini, Vaishnaw, who had first called out Meta. Shivnath Thukral, Meta India's Vice President of Public Policy, through a post on social media platform X, has said that Mark Zuckerberg's observation that many incumbent parties were not re-elected in 2024 elections holds true for several countries, but not India. He said, and I quote, "We would like to apologize for this inadvertent error. India remains an incredibly important country for Meta, and we look forward to being at the heart of its innovative future." On Monday, BJP MP Nishikant Dubey had said that a parliamentary panel will also summon the representatives of Meta between January 20th and January 24th, seeking an apology for Mark Zuckerberg's remarks. Nishikant Dubey is also the chairperson of this committee. So how does this controversy change the dynamic of India-Meta relationship? Has the Indian government made an important point to social media platforms and intermediaries that they won't have a free run? Will this row also escalate now, and what form can it take? That's what we will discuss tonight. Joining me now is a panel of guests, but first, let's take a look at what Mark Zuckerberg said exactly.
2024 was a big election year around the world, and there are all these countries, India, just like a ton of countries that had elections, and the incumbents basically lost every single one. So there is some sort of a global phenomenon where whether it was because of inflation, because of the economic policies to deal with COVID, or just how the governments dealt with COVID, seems to have had this effect that's global.
Okay, joining me now is Senthil Nayagam, who's the founder of Munium AI, and we also have Professor Zenia Behel, who's a tech expert. Thank you both of you for joining me on this show. To you, Mr. Senthil, first, how do you see the IT minister calling out Meta and, of course, the subsequent apology? Because I do feel that the government reacted very sharply to this. Why do you think this happened? Because there's, of course, a context to this, the kind of relationship that Meta and India have had, but also there have been collaborations. In fact, just 2 months ago, we reported that there is this Meta a strategic collaboration with Meta that we have with MeitY now with respect to promoting AI. So there are collaborations on one hand, and also on the other, the government telling social media companies that, who's the boss. So how do you see this?
Okay, it's a 2-hour plus video, and it comes out 17th minute. Okay, only a couple of minutes of talk about that part. Okay, they have taken a total turnaround. Okay, so and the whole media is going to a particular direction. So they have gone away with the fact-checking part and other things, and then it comes into the political part. Okay, India is the largest market for Meta. For WhatsApp is the dominant platform. The only good part is they are not dominant on the UPI part, but they are hugely on that part. And Facebook also, and Instagram, all three cover it. Especially after TikTok went away, they got a lot of prominence. So government, okay, see, we are one of the about 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. So we want to showcase each time we are being misrepresented, we want to put into action. He didn't say India lost elections or Modi lost elections, but maybe the perception at that election result would have been maybe 400 par was not the case. Maybe we were slightly short on that part, and that's how that went in. Okay. But government wants to take it seriously. That's an important factor. Another thing is a lot of work is happening in AI, and Meta is kind of leading in that way. Twitter changed their strategy with the system. Now Meta is falling in line, and same with happening with Google. Okay, and if you see the whole video in the end, they will go and target Apple, which has not made any public announcements on what shift is happening. Okay, so next week we'll have Trump in the White House, and everything is going towards that system.
That's a very important thing. Professor Behel, we've also seen Meta come under scrutiny in the EU, and also it's also preparing for Trump 2.0. Last time we spoke on fact checkers, the activity of suspension, the action and the implications. But till now, when you talk about India, the level playing field for both Meta and government was in some ways uneven because there was no proper data protection law in the country. Everything had to go through courts. But now the rules have been notified. They could be implemented soon. There have also been problems with antitrust policies that you see CCI battling with Meta. Do you see the relationship of Meta changing with India, and how do you see the apology of Meta in this regard?
See, I think the apology is very important, right? The apology is very important to essentially stop any discussion, any unwanted discussion, and any negative publicity for Meta. They wouldn't want to risk that, especially with India being, um, um, you know, with Indians and India being one of the biggest users of Meta products, including Facebook and Instagram. So Meta needs to ensure that it has a very fruitful, very productive, and a very favorable relationship with the Indian government and with the people of India, right? And Joe Rogan is, of course, a very popular podcaster in the United States. He has had a lot of dignitaries, musicians, sports people, politicians come to his podcast and express their views, and of course, be very frank about what they feel. And he talked a lot in that podcast about misinformation with regards to vaccines, right? With the current administration, the Biden administration trying to suppress popular voices, suppress any dissent, right? He talked a lot about that, and he talked very freely. And then came the point about what happened across the democratic world, right? What happened coming out of the pandemic, and how many countries around the world, many incumbent, I should say, governments around the world were challenged, right? And many of them lost power because of their performance during the pandemic. And that way he brought up India, but of course an apology was necessary, because in India, the Modi government did not lose power. They came back to power, right? And that's what he was hinting at. So what this implies for the overall relationship is hope that it doesn't negatively impact the relationship, because as I said, India is an extremely important country for Meta, with Indians being amongst the biggest users.
Right. Also, Senthil, I noticed that the IT minister did not really tag Mark Zuckerberg. He tagged Meta. So this was, probably, one of those messages that was being sent out to Meta, because India is also, like you rightly pointed out, one of Meta's largest markets. What would be the political undertones to this message that Indian government sent out to Meta? And also, it was, Mr. Thukral who responded to this. How do you see that, sir?
No, this is not a confrontation which we are doing, but we want to make sure we are being taken. See, everybody has their domestic compulsions. Okay, US shift is happening. If you have noticed, 2 years back, Zuckerberg had a different image of himself in suit and doing it to China and other thing. Okay, now he has suddenly become maybe a martial art expert, changing his hairstyle, the clothing and t-shirts are showing his fit. Okay, doing diving, all kind of thing is doing. That's part of the thing. Okay, and one of the announcement is what. See, it's not okay. Some random guy wants to go into Joe Rogan show. See, if you notice, even last week, Modi went onto a podcast as well, right? So these are things which people do for a particular audience, the target segment. That show is Joe Rogan is primarily for US audience, and we did everything for our Indian audience. I don't think people want to take as a big news a top. Okay, India is trying to push Meta. This has not been a front page news in anywhere in Western world. So yeah.
Right. Professor Bahel, the latest controversy also adds to Meta's already troubled history in India, but also help us understand why is Meta getting under scrutiny in several countries? Is it also because governments have changed, and where does this outrage against Meta's certain policies, be it with fact checkers or be it with antitrust policies or even privacy, where does that stem from? Is it because different countries are also having a transition government, or at least the government has changed in several countries?
I think Meta in general is facing a lot of backlash because of the spread of misinformation, right? Especially in the United States, with the spread of misinformation during the elections, during the presidential elections. Mark Zuckerberg very recently took the call of, doing away altogether and dismissing the fact-checking program, right? To ensure enshrinement of free speech, which is the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And of course, it's a constitutional entitlement for the people of India as well, right? And Meta is one of the platforms where people have healthy debate, where people have healthy discussion about politics, about their viewpoint, right? About candidates, and so much more, right? Vaccines, healthcare. There is so much discussion happening with almost half the planet using Meta, right? So there is a lot of backlash because of the spread of misinformation. Very recently, Mark Zuckerberg has come in the limelight for openly criticizing the Biden administration, right, supporting Trump. So I think that Meta is currently going through a transformation wherein they're looking at, again, promoting their platforms as a place for debate and welcoming, both sides, welcoming views from the left and the right.
Senthil, do you think the fact that Meta also did not want this confrontation to fester, does that also mean that Meta is also, hoping that Indian government is cordial towards its policies? Because we have the Data Protection Act coming up next. There are already cases with regard to WhatsApp's privacy policy. CCI has been at it for a long time now. What does this tell you about Meta's future plans when it comes to India, specifically with regard to its social media?
Okay, for last a decade or more, all the social media accounts or major providers had to depend on left in some way. The government were pro-left or some other topic. So they had overall control. And something changed once Twitter was acquired by Elon Musk, rebranded to X. And maybe he played a major role in Trump getting election won. Okay, and Trump was very clear. Those who are not conforming, because when he was he was banned on Twitter. That's a thing which happened. Okay, but we have to see another example. India during COVID, at that period when we had a Galwan clashes, India banned was the first one to ban TikTok, right? And the US, nearly half of the US uses TikTok on a daily basis. They've been talking about banning it for over 2 years. Nothing has happened, and cases are going on. And now there are rumors also going on. Maybe China is kind of okay that maybe TikTok US version is being acquired by Elon Musk. That's something which is going on. Okay, so like India, if it's serious, it can ban apps which are not conforming to India's territorial integrity. Right? We always have issues with map, Arunachal or Kashmir. We see that part. So Google always have the tenter hook on that part. And again, India has data center. India does the backend for the whole world, and all the top CEOs are Indians as well. So we have some influence. Like Microsoft came in. Satya Nadella was here early January. Right? So we see all these operations happening. So this is a kind of multi-step thing happening. Sometimes it's not Meta itself. Maybe we are giving a warning to a lot of people. Hey, if you don't confirm or if you try to show India in a bad light in any way, we'll be proactively acting upon it. Okay, there are a lot of cases or a lot of discussions are happening in a lot of parts, from hiring people to firing, or maybe with AI going on. Okay, Llama. See, if you see, Facebook is the only company which doesn't have offers cloud as a service. Microsoft, Google, everyone does it. We can kind of tweak it. Facebook has again built a huge AI model, predominantly with the data what people have shared with it, photos and images and videos. They have huge model. So government wants something on the pie. How do you control them? Right. So that's where we are going in for.
A very, very important and interesting point. Professor Bell, last question to you, and also your your closing remarks on, how does this really have the potential to impact the user's experience on it, and also when it comes to freedom of expression, because, this constantly changing policies with respect to political changes in different parts of the world, and also, a moderate behavior, ensuring that with the government, Meta does not have a very confrontational relationship. Does this have any implications on the users of India, or specifically any other country?
See, I think that users will continue to use a Meta platform, especially in India, in Brazil, in the United States, where it's most popular, to express their opinions, right? There was a question of suppressing dissent. There was a question of suppressing dissent, especially during elections, and looking into misinformation and the spread of misinformation. And while they've done away with fact checking, Meta wants to encourage more debate. Meta wants to encourage healthy debate and let users decide what information should they take into consideration, what information do they find valuable versus what they do not, right? Instead of the platform telling them that this actually may not be accurate, right? Because that's what he talked about in that podcast. If you hear, his take on vaccines and what he talked about when it comes to vaccine information on the Meta platform, he clearly stated that, the Biden administration asked Meta to shut down some stories, even though they were important, right? So it's very hard at this point for social media platforms to really tell what is the correct information and what is information, and that responsibility should be left to the viewer. While some intervention may be needed, right? Social media platforms do have that responsibility, but I think it's very important for social media platforms to promote healthy debate and to let all sides equally speak about their viewpoint without feeling suppressed and without feeling, left out.
Right. Thank you both of you for joining me
And
in
that's
this
really what I have to
broadcast.
say. Healthy
Thank you.
debate and free speech.
Right. So clearly,
Thank you.
these platforms have to have accountability, but also they need to provide platform to ensure that there is freedom of expression when it comes to expressing diverse amount of views.